This film has a 1.8 on IMDb, and I finally saw it. So let's talk about it. I'm John Stark, back at TheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about Snow White. This is currently available on Disney Plus with audio description. It stars Rachel Ziegler, Gal Gadot, and is directed by Mark Webb. Click like and subscribe. Enjoy my cult following here on YouTube, where I am nothing if not honest. And before you jump ship and you're like, oh God, there's another white man and he's reviewing Snow White. I don't know. Why don't you stick around and see what I have to say about the film? So, yeah, I didn't go to the theaters for this. I did get an invite, which is fun because it means I got an advanced screening invite. I just couldn't go. I'm busy and I also blind and don't drive, which means arranging transportation is either just expensive or I have to find somebody who wants to go with me, which, yeah, no one wanted to go see Snow White. Just now catching up on it. And it's part of this Disney thing where they keep sort of like regurgitating their own product into live action adaptations. I think it would be way more fun if they took some of their live action adaptations and made them animated Pirates of the Caribbean, maybe, I don't know, but that's just me. Maybe go the other direction with it. But we just keep seeing sort of them sort of breaking their brand, actually, because the whole idea of Disney animation is that it's timeless. That's why there are theme parks. That's why it's Cinderella's castle. That's why kids whose parents didn't even grow up with Cinderella in theaters are going to Disney World and standing in front of Cinderella's castle because it's timeless. Not because they saw the live action movie that came out in like 2010, but because they can sit down in front of the animated cartoon that came out, even before I was born, like way back, and watch that. And they should still be able to do that with Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. These films are supposed to be timeless. And Snow White was the first animated feature to hit theaters. I mean, it was an achievement in cinema itself. So if you're going to go for the first one, if you're going to strike big and try to remake Snow White, then do it. Like, do it, but do it so that you're not just feeling like you're besmirching the idea that the first one is somehow now unwatchable in 2025, that a 5-year-old girl can't sit there and go, oh my God, I love Snow White. Because I don't think that that's true. I think kids just love cartoons from any age. I didn't notice the difference. I watched cartoons from my age and then also watched the Flintstones and the Jetsons and all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons when I was growing up. And the old Disney movies. I watched it all. And I didn't sit there and go, some of these cartoons are old. And I don't like that. I think kids just like things when they're kids. So this one is sort of infamous now because of Rachel Ziegler, because she has opinions and the internet has opinions. And thus the 1.8 IMDb rating was born, which is definitely from a whole bunch of people who haven't seen this movie. Because if that many people had seen this movie would be doing a lot better at the box office. But most of the people who want to trash the movie don't ever bother actually seeing it. They just trash it based on sort of like philosophy alone. But I actually saw Snow White, and yeah, it's not perfect, but it's also not the worst live action Disney adaptation that I've seen. It has some pros and cons. About even. It also feels like a film that was directed by like 20 different people off of like 47 different screenplays, and that they attempted to cut the film like 127 times based off of 7 different times they reshot the movie. And it's just an amalgamation of ideas at this point and concepts, and the fact that it works at all, even just a little bit, is kind of mind-boggling, because I have a feeling that phrase, too many cooks in the kitchen, if this was a kitchen, you would have opened the door and it like the cooks wouldn't be able to move. There'd just be too many cooks of them standing in there, too many Disney executives yelling about things and being worried about people's feelings and opinions on things. But the dwarf community doesn't want, and there are Rachel Ziegler people online. Oh, now we have people who hate Gal Gadot, but we have the people who don't like princes and when they come, and and save women, and we can't do that either. And Oh, but what about the new songs? What do we do? What do we do with the old songs? Oh, just a lot of fun ideas and a lot of thoughts, and this sort of regurgitated itself into what you now have as Snow White. So I don't like the audio description to this because I think it's a little bit. I don't like audio description that treats us as blind and low vision users as like stupid, which is what this does. Disney has a really bad habit of overstepping their boundaries in dictating what can and can't be in audio description. And instead of letting an audio description professional decide how to translate the visuals to us in the most effective way possible, they're often worried about what words do we use? What do we talk about? How do we refer to things? So they dodge a lot having to do with the dwarves, who are referred to as minors. So I'm going to try to avoid saying that I'm talking about 7 minors, because that word has a double meaning if you change the E to an O. And so it was just kind of weird to hear that word over and over and over again. And I'm a big proponent of size relativity, and I have no idea how big these dwarves are in relation to Snow White. If they completely abandoned the concept or not, they could have made them even smaller. They could be, ant size or something. I have no idea. It's really hard to tell because they, again, kind of stay away from it. Like they're allergic to it. And yeah, there was backlash and Peter Dinklage had thoughts. But I think there's a happy medium because it's not like Snow White is the only franchise that has dwarves in a fantasy world. And I understand not wanting to be sort of used as sort of this fantastical element where you're just sort of like a person and that's your thing. Believe me, as a blind person, I see so many blind characters now in things who are like, I'm sage and I can see the future, or I'm mystical in some element because I'm blind. Or I constantly run into people in my real life who think I'm like Daredevil and think like, are all your senses heightened? Can you like see like Daredevil? Is it like echolocation? And I do get dumb questions like that all the time. So I understand sort of like propagating stereotypes on film, but I think that the answer is bringing somebody into the conversation instead of just trying to avoid it altogether, is to reach out and say, how do we do this? How do we get from point A to point B? Disney never really understands how to do this. So, for example, like they're with the Lone Ranger, right? They are bound and determined to have Johnny Depp play Tonto. So instead of casting an actual Native American actor in Tonto, they had Johnny Depp go out and sit with the Indians and get like adopted into a tribe. Okay, I feel like there's an easier way to do that, but must we have Johnny Depp as Tonto, I guess, because he was in Pirates, so he must be the thing that's going to save the Lone Ranger. Well, they miscalculated on that. So there's a lot of miscalculations here in Snow White. We do have some lovely scenes. We start off in the beginning with, of course, if you want to be a Disney princess, your parents have to die. So we start off with a lovely little girl who's playing Snow White. She's adorable. And they're singing this beautiful, brand new opening song that I actually really liked. And we get introduced to her parents, who seem like lovely people, very nice, the king and queen. And then the queen just kind of suddenly dies. And the king meets the evil queen, played by Gadot, who comes in with her. They say that she derives her power from her beauty, but they never really go far into that. Like, how? Because if she gets it from her beauty, then when Mirror Mirror says you're not the fairest of them all, her power should start to wane. But they don't really show that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it feels like there are a lot of ideas, but they're never really followed through on because somebody else came along and they changed a scene or they rewrote a scene, and then they forgot why that ever was there to begin with. So like there are these ideas that are introduced but never finished. And Dad kind of abruptly goes off to fight in the war because they need to get rid of Dad. So we don't get to spend any time with Dad and the evil queen to see. He just kind of rushes away pretty quickly, leaving little Snow White with the evil queen. And she's basically turned into like a Cinderella, where she's like a maid, and the evil queen just sits around and eats fancy meals all day. Snow White catches this robber guy, Jonathan, I think was his name. I don't care who the actor is. He's basically Zachary Levi from Tangled, that character. They decided not to go the prince route for Snow White, and instead she's going to be saved by a guy who lives in the woods and is smarmy. Uh, it's not really charming. He's kind of sarcastic. It's kind of like Jim from The Office. I don't know. It's just there's a lot of characters this guy's like, but again, he feels like an idea and a concept where they were like, well, we don't want a prince, but how do we do this? And they were like, well, what if we just do Tangled? And maybe that's why they canceled Tangled after Snow White, because they were like, well, that guy didn't work, so Tangled won't work, because it's basically the same male lead. So Zachary Levi probably should have just played the character, which would have made audiences very confused, because they would have wanted to support Zachary Levi, but they would have been mad at Rachel Ziegler. I would have loved to see that, with heads exploding, people being like, and like their ears just start bleeding as like, they're like, I have to see the Zachary Levi movie, but it also has Rachel Ziegler in it. And then like you just see like hundreds of YouTube videos of all of these like all these troll critics, and their heads are actually like exploding on YouTube. So there are two sides to this coin. Fast forward, we have to get to the point where Snow White is fairest of them all. She's sent into the woods. Huntsman doesn't want to kill her and bring the heart back to the evil queen. Duh, because that would be horrifying in a Disney movie. Snow White runs through this weird ass forest, by the way, where I'm like, are the trees actually alive, or are we just doing this metaphorically? It's really hard to tell, and we're not going to explore it either, because we don't have time to explore the ideas. We have time to have people introduce them, but we don't ever have time for people to explore them. So, and then she gets to the miners and finds her little house, and of course the miners still have to sing hi ho and whistle while you work, which they will. And she lives with them for a little while, and then she's like, I have to go back, because Jonathan was captured again. She tried saving him the first time, and I guess didn't work out. This guy just keeps getting into trouble. So eventually the queen does the whole thing with the apple, where she shows up, and man, Snow White takes that apple really quickly. And here it's introduced even clunkier, because she shows up and she's like there to warn Snow White about Jonathan. She's like, Jonathan sent me. He's been held by the evil queen. And then before Snow White leaves, she's like, oh, take this apple for sustenance. And so Snow White eats the apple immediately. Sustenance is usually like on the way. Like people usually take food for the trip, not before the trip. So again, it feels like we have ideas and we have thoughts. It all rushes towards a finale that basically is, evil queen versus Snow White. Obviously, yes, she does. She quote unquote dies or falls under the spell or whatever you want to call it, and then has to be resuscitated. That all happens. Then there's a battle in the forest, and like the people of the land who remember her father being kind rise with Snow White. It's not a girl boss movie, because Snow White doesn't fight. She's not Kristen Stewart. She's basically, her power is kindness. This whole thing is like a good versus evil thing, but it's very muddy because they don't know what to do with it. So Gal Gadot is never evil enough, because they've kept her inside of a box. They basically said, watch what Angelina Jolie did in Maleficent and try to do that, but never go too big with it. Always keep it. So all of what Gal Gadot does is very sort of flat, and it's this like sexy evil is what she's trying to do. I mean, meanwhile, Rachel Ziegler always sounds like she's out of breath because she's trying to do that Disney princess thing. So it's all just this, oh, I don't understand. Why do we have to go? Oh no. It's just the same thing for the whole movie. It's exhausting. She never has any development because nobody ever lets her develop, because the film is, God forbid, it also feels like it's trying to avoid her becoming a girl boss, because they've heard that term used before, and they're like, oh, well, we have to keep her dainty and feminine, so she has to remain this way the whole time. So, in what could have been a really interesting ending of good versus evil, because at the end of the thing, Snow White saves herself by just remembering everybody's names. Literally, there's a thing earlier in the film where with the dwarves. I'm just gonna keep saying that because I hate minors and it sounds weird. Uh, they go through the names, and she makes a comment about being able to remember them because her dad always taught her remembering people's names was important. So they do drop that in there. So it's planned. This is one of the things where it's like some things got chopped out and then some ideas got finished and other ideas didn't. This is an idea that actually gets completed where she does drop the thing earlier and then there's a payoff to it where all the guards who are about to kill her, she knows all of them and says all their names. She's like, you were the baker, you were a farmer, and you have a wife, and you always made sure that people ate, and like all of them, you know, grow kind again or whatever because of her kindness. Her kindness radiates basically. She doesn't kill him. She's just not a badass. She doesn't kick down doors. So yeah, and then happy ever after. She has to vanquish the queen and live happy ever after with Jonathan from the woods. So the whole thing's narrated by Dopey, which I don't like. I don't like that they push the Dopey thing. Like, we have to make the one dwarf that doesn't talk. But why? But do you? You're already doing a lot. And I'm all for doing things differently. But I feel like you're already doing enough differently with the dwarves by calling them minors. I don't even know if they're dwarves. They could be like her height. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they could just be like slightly shorter than her. Like Kevin Hart. I have no idea because the audio description was not great. So it's I like the music. I actually did like the new music in this. I didn't hate Jonathan's song was probably the worst of the new songs for me. But then it kind of got better when it stopped becoming like a solo for him and like the ensemble started coming in around him. I was like, oh well, now it's the song is. But like at the beginning, I was like, I don't even think this guy's that good at. Well, who cast him? Who is this? I don't even bother memorizing his name because he was the least interesting thing about this movie for me. I love how people keep bashing Rachel Ziegler and Gal Gadot, and I'm like, Jonathan was like nothing. They didn't even bother. They didn't even try to find somebody who was remotely interesting in terms of casting. It's the kind of role that I would have given to. I'm assuming they don't want Zachary Levi playing like multiple princes, but maybe like Skylar Astin, like probably could have done that role really well. Ben Platt, I don't know, somebody, but do something with the role. It's just it ends up being really forgettable. So I I I I think people are hating Rachel Ziegler for completely different reasons other than her performance, but also I don't think her performance is great. I think she's been better in other things. I thought she was great in West Side Story. Honestly, she's better in like Y2K, which is not even that great of a performance, because she's forced into this idea of presenting this cartoonish Disney princess thing. Like, she had to listen to the original Snow White voice and try to materialize this breathy, high-pitched femininity thing. And she couldn't just speak as herself. She actually has to like manipulate her voice into this thing, and it's weird. Meanwhile, Gal Gadot is over there doing like, it's a kingdom. Yes, we have to follow me and I will keep you safe. And I'm like, what are you doing? But I think that's exactly what she was told to do. They cast Gal Gadot because she's hot. And they were like, we just need you to be sexy but evil. Okay, so she did that. It just doesn't have many layers to it. It's not a level performance. They also do things that are kind of dumb because they don't really know what to do with her magic. So she does the same trick twice. Then the second time is dumb. The first time it's fine because you can do that trick once and it works. Where she talks about like beauty and she materializes a rose out of thin air and then the rose wilts. And then she materializes a diamond and she's like, but the diamond is forever. Like, Elizabeth Taylor would love you. Thank you. So, and then later on, she materializes the rose again. I'm like, God damn it. And then she materializes like a crystal dagger. So I'm like, this is not the same thing, but it's still the same gag. It's like, do you have limited powers and range? Like, we don't really know what the full scope of her powers are and why she keeps everybody in the kingdom because they don't really explore it. Because when they say like she gets her power from her beauty, they don't really know what that means. and they don't really know how to express that on screen, and it's kind of dangerous to send that message to little girls to be like, the beautiful ones, they're the powerful ones. So, what does that mean for Snow White? Because shouldn't she then gain magic as she becomes the fairest of them all? Because she doesn't. Hot take. So yeah, this film doesn't always know what it's trying to say or do, but I also don't think it's a complete wash. It's near a complete wash, I will say. But still, like, Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio is worse than this. There's probably a couple other films I just can't go through all of them in my head at the same time, of the live action Disney remakes of things where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done that again. Or this to me reminded me a lot of like Peter Pan and Wendy, where like some of the ideas worked, but not all of them. So it's sort of very mid for me. But unfortunately, you wouldn't know that because there's like a troll army online that has to hate everything simply because of somebody being in it, which I don't do. I know it seems like I do because if you look at the last Zachary Levi movie that I reviewed, it was Unbreakable Boy, which I thought was hot garbage, mainly because of his interpretation of autism, not really because of his individual performance, although he probably shouldn't also be in the movie based on his thoughts on autism. But yeah, I liked Harold and Purple Crayon, and after I reviewed the second Shazam movie, which is also on my channel, Shazam: Fury of the Gods, I said that I hoped that James Gunn would find ways to keep Zachary Levi around as Shazam. I kind of like the idea of him maybe being in with Suicide Squad, because I think he's a good Shazam. I didn't really like the sequel too much, but I like him as an actor, as like what he's done. I liked him in First Date. I liked his version of She Loves Me when he was on Broadway in that. So I'm able to separate like him from his thoughts that I don't like. I don't know why other people can't do that. Why is the other side constantly trying to hate on anything that has a quote unquote girl boss, Rachel Ziegler, a person of color in the lead, Pedro Pascal? Why am I getting these things in my feed all the time? You know, it just it reveals yourself to be trolls, not actual film critics or even cinephiles. They're not even fans of film, because a true fan of film, of the medium, would recognize the fact that hundreds of artists worked on these movies and they wouldn't let it go down to a 1.8 on IMDb just because of Rachel Ziegler, just because of one person and their thoughts. Same thing for anybody who hates Gal Gadot because she once was in the Israeli army, because they all are. Like, Israel is one of those countries that drafts people like sort of like has a mandatory requirement of service, like South Korea, sort of like how BTS is in the South Korean army. So would people protest BTS if they didn't like that? Like if they were like, oh, we don't like people. So I don't, it's a weird choice. So ultimately what you're doing is you're saying that all of the people downstream, all of the costume designers, production designers, the hair and makeup team, all of the production assistants who worked on this movie, script supervisors, all of the visual effects team, the people who wrote the score, all those people just don't matter to you because one person said something and you don't like it. Cool. I don't know how much of this Mark Webb directed. I bet he has some stories to tell about how many calls from executives he was getting. This film has an ungodly budget because it probably, again, had so much feedback, and they kept pushing the idea of change this, we have to make these people happy. Oh, these people are angry over here, and they keep pushing it back, and they keep trying to rework the film. When you do that, it ends up being this sort of weird amalgamation of ideas that never really get completed because you introduce something that the original writer had an idea. The person who came up with that thought had a point A and a point B, but in your whole jostling of things around, the point B is gone. So, or it gets muddled, or, it like the idea is sort of there because what might have been a clever setup ends up just never getting resolved. So now we have Snow White, which is probably not doing the thing it was supposed to do, which was, bring a new attention to the original princess, when that's exactly what it could have done. Is it Rachel Ziegler's fault? No. Is it Gadot's fault? No. Is it Mark Webb's fault? No. It's probably a little bit of everybody. It's the internet trying to define something before ever having seen it. And it's also the studio for having listened to 1,000 different angry sources about all of these different things and trying to half placate everybody and then still release a product. At the end of the day, it's like, if too many people don't want you to make the thing, then just don't make it. If it's becoming so cost prohibitive to make the thing, then just don't make it. And but if you are going to make it good. Just stand by your guns and be like, we're here to make a great movie, and then put the haters to shame instead of trying to do this. I liked the music. I think "Waiting on a Wish" is a good song. I, I, I think that "Waiting on a Wish" is a better song than anything that was in Mufasa or Moana 2, the last two Disney movies that have had original music in them. So I stand by that. I'm gonna give Snow White a C. So it's it's like a coin toss of whether or not I would go recommend or not recommend. I'm gonna lean towards not recommend just because I think it's like I just think it's too much of a mess. But there are qualities here that I like. There are things or ideas or things that started to work and then didn't work. There's music here that is somehow new and good at the same time. But I don't think anybody's willing to recognize that in this, what is ultimately sort of like a wash of a film. So that's Snow White. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.